Over 3 years ago, I made a video on cheap hot hatchbacks for under £5,000. Today, I thought I would update that video since the market has changed so much. 10 cars, all hot hatchbacks that you can buy for under 5k. Let's get straight into it. Hit the like button for more videos like this, subscribe as well if you're new. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's kick this video off with the Abarth 595, a car that I enjoyed driving recently thanks to its properly old school hot hatch formula being super small and not super powerful. That's why it's taking 10th on this list with its 1.4 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, which makes 160 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 7.2 seconds. Not particularly quick, but given its size it still feels quick enough for the package. In Competizione spec it gets slightly more power, some better brakes and an exhaust swap, as well as some nice sport seats as well, which do look pretty good in my opinion. It does feel sharp and fun to throw around, but weirdly also less agile at slow speeds than you would expect for a car as small as it is. One main benefit is it does come with a crazy number of specs for a car in this price range, so do shop around for the right example for you. These will run you around £3,500 at the bottom end, and 5k will get you into a 2013 model with 100,000 miles on it. Generally, engine and gearbox reliability has been pretty good. Instead, I would try to make sure the example you buy has been looked after well, given these can be boy racer cars. Next up we have the Mark 7 Ford Fiesta ST, a car that has been through a surprisingly large amount of depreciation since its release back in 2013. Now that this car is over 10 years old, you can find it listed anywhere from around the 4k mark, and for 5k you'll be looking at a 2014 model with 100,000 miles on it. For that kind of money you're getting a 1.6 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, making 179 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.7 seconds, which is pretty punchy for Ford's entry-level performance hatchback. When I compare this gen Fiesta ST to its Focus equivalent, it somehow looks more modern, despite its stylings genuinely being somewhat based on that Focus. It was a 3-door in the UK market and weirdly a 5-door in the US, but both models came with an overboost feature which increased the power delivery to 197 brake horsepower for 15 seconds, which kinda reminds me of NOS from games like Need for Speed Underground or Burnout 3 Takedown. Pre-2014 models did get recalls for cylinder head cracking, which is a pretty horrendous issue, and similar to the Abarth, watch out for ones that have led a tough life. Next up we've got one of the oldest cars on the list, the Seat Leon Cupra R, which quite surprisingly was designed by one of the most distinguished car designers ever, Giorgetto Giugiaro. That's why the shape does look quite timeless, and even after the end of its production in 2006, it remained a highly rated car, receiving recognition still through to today. It literally placed top 10 in Autocar's poll for the best hot hatchback of all time. In part that's because it hosts the famous BAM engine, a 1.8 litre turbocharged inline-4, which puts out 221 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.7 seconds, matching the Fiesta. What's crazy is on release this car was priced the same as a Mark IV Golf GTI, which no one wanted, and £7,000 cheaper than the S3 it shared its engine with, despite of course obviously being front wheel drive rather than the S3's Quattro. But that didn't matter, the package and experience in these was too good outside of the slightly uninteresting interior, hence they remain pretty sought after today. They start at around the £4,500 mark, and 5k will get you into a 2004 model with 100k on the clock. Cam belt and water pumps are the main ones to check when it comes to service history on them, but the 6-speed manual transmission is known to be pretty good outside of the clutch. One of the most malleable and yet best out of the box hot hatch packages on this list has to be the EP3 Honda Civic Type R, the first generation we officially got here in the UK, but the second generation to actually hit the roads after the EK9 was released exclusively for the Japanese market. Part of the reason why it's so tunable and so well loved is that K20 engine block, a 2 litre inline-4 which makes 197 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.4 seconds. Really not bad for one of only 2 naturally aspirated cars on this list. If you get one though, you'll probably want to switch out some of the Euro parts for JDM ones, like the red Recaro race seats and the LSD. You won't be able to get the stiffer chassis the JDM models got though, and what's crazy is that Hello JDM example was actually built in the UK and shipped back to Japan. These are listed anywhere from around the 3.6k mark, but as they're generally quite reliable, 5k will only get you a high mileage example since people put a lot of miles on them. Just missing out on the top 5 we have the R56 Mini Hatch John Cooper Works, the second JCW we saw out on the roads, but the first to come fully equipped as a JCW from factory, as the R53 generation example was effectively a power kit for the Cooper S. It did have more power than the standard R56 Cooper S though, thanks to its 1.6 litre turbocharged inline-4 block, which makes 208 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.3 seconds, and it's further helped by the fact that it has quite go-karty handling dynamics. Part of this handling comes from the fact that the car is inspired by the challenge car used in supporting race series around the world, even going as far as finishing 4th and 2nd in class in the 2011 and 2012 24 hours of the Nürburgring respectively. Aesthetically, they got an extra aero kit and some interior mods, and they also got some suspension upgrades over the standard Cupra S. £4,000 the minimum you'll find these listed for, and 5k gets you into a 2009 model with 100k on the clock. Ideally, you don't want an N14 engine, as they literally have a support group on Facebook for how troublesome they are, so spend a bit extra and get one with an N18 instead. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video. If you are, then do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're new. It really helps the channel out. And let me know in the comments down below, 3-door or 5-door? I'm a 3-door kind of guy, but a lot of people are into 5 doors nowadays. Want to hear your thoughts. On to the top 5 now, and in 5th we have the VW Golf R32 from the Mark V generation Golf. It was the 2nd generation R32 and the last one to come with that nice 3.2 litre VR6 engine from which it takes its name, that puts out 246 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 6.3 seconds, matching the Mini, which is pretty big for the Mini to be honest, given the R32 is an all-wheel drive top of the line hot hatch from VW. The Mark V picked up where the Mark IV R32 left off and really cemented the R formula, with the only thing missing being an estate model. It has a more aggressive R interior and a slightly more striking exterior, plus the offering of a DSG Auto, which is the main point of reliability failures on these from what I can see on forums. This plus the Haldex all-wheel drive is basically what we expect out of any R cars today. That VR6 doesn't quite sound like a V6, it's slightly raspier, but with the right exhaust, these can really sing. They're listed anywhere from around the 4k mark, and for 5k you'll be getting yourself a 2006 model with 80,000 miles on it. When I took a trip to the Nürburgring back in 2017, I would probably say the single most common car I came across was this, the 2nd generation Renault Megane RS, based on the 3rd gen Megane. That should come as no surprise, given this generation twice held the front wheel drive lap record at the ring in both pre and post facelift spec, going bar for bar with the Seat Leon Cupra. The record setting RSs are sadly out of our price range, but the base model isn't, and comes with a 2 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, which makes 246 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 5.9 seconds, matched with great handling dynamics, particularly with the stiffer Cup model, to make it worth taking on track days. Not only do these look good, they give a real racing vibe with some of the finer details like the aluminium pedals, the special sports steering wheel, a rev counter and all the rest, which combines with the Brembo front brakes to make a very decent track day car that you can daily drive. They start at around £4,750, making it the most expensive car on the list, and 5k gets you a 2010 model with 100k on it. Gearboxes and flywheels seem to cause the most issues from what I can see on forums. In 3rd on this list we have a highly underrated hot hatchback, the Mazda 3 MPS, known as the Mazda Speed 3 in some markets and the Mazda Speed Excella in Japan. This car had 2 distinct generations, though both shared the same engine, a 2.3 litre turbocharged inline-4 that makes 256 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 5.9 seconds, which is pretty good for a car that goes so far under the radar. The 2nd gen in particular got some cool extra features like the LSD as standard and the larger brake disc for better stopping power. Add on the top mounted intercooler with a focus on minimizing heat soak, and you have a properly sorted hot hatch for the money. It might not be as aesthetically shouty with only the alloys, bonnet scoop and spoiler really giving away the performance, but for some this anonymous vibe will do wonders. These are listed anywhere from around the £3,500 mark if you're after a 1st gen, and for 5k you'll get a 2nd gen from 2010 with 100k on the clock. The K04 Turbo suffers the same issues it does in other cars, really failing prematurely, but broadly they've been pretty reliable. Taking 2nd on this list is actually a car that received a fair bit of flack for not quite giving a proper hot hatch experience, the Alfa Romeo Giulietta Quadrifoglio. Despite that flack, it does have pretty insane specs thanks to its 1.7 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, which you'll also find in my beloved Alfa 4C, producing 236 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 5.8 seconds. It's just a shame the handling dynamics weren't up to the standards some journalists and owners were looking for when they saw an Alfa hot hatch. Regardless though, it's very nice looking, more sleeperish than previous Alfa hot hatches with the 5-door look, and original examples were actually called the Giulietta Cloverleaf here in the UK before getting the QV nameplate in 2014. With the 2014 facelift, you could even get the automatic transmission out of the Alfa 4C on these, which I can tell you firsthand is a lovely, fast changing auto box with paddles. 4k is the minimum you'll find these listed for, and 5k gets you into a 2010 model with around 70,000 miles on the clock. Build quality on the interior with squeaks and rattles seems to be the main problems owners have with them according to forums. Taking the top spot on this list we have the 2nd generation Audi S3, which which is interesting because despite used cars generally going up in price recently, the last time I spoke about this topic 3 years ago, you could only really afford the first gen S3. Now though, these start at around the £3,500 mark, with 5k still getting you into a pretty high mileage example. For that money, however, you'll be getting yourself a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, which makes 261 brake horsepower, the most on this list, taking the car to 60 in 5.3 seconds, half a second faster than the Giulietta, and way ahead of everything else on this list. On release, it was a bit controversial as it was significantly more expensive than rivals like the Vauxhall Astra VXR and the BMW 130i, but at the same time, it was generally faster to 60. It also came as both the standard hatch or the Sportback model, which is reminiscent of a baby estate, though it's effectively just a 5-door version. It's got a Howdeck diff rather than the standard Quattro Torsen, and is overall a definite hot hatch, where its RS3 equivalent would be a hyper hatch of its day. According to forums, non-engine electrics provide the main issues with these. And there you have it, 10 cheap hot hatchbacks for under £5,000. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks to the patrons for their continued support. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and click here for another video on some pretty cool hot hatchbacks.